starting the Fireside chat with you. My first question would be that what experiences or events in your journey with VR sparked your interest and passion for this technology?
A number of years ago, when I did my master's in educational technology, I developed an interest in virtual, mixed, and augmented reality. Reflecting on the technology, particularly virtual reality, it struck me that it's the only medium, the only educational technology I'm aware of where students can learn in the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective domain. It's a means to provide experiential learning, hands-on learning, to take students in a completely different world that no other technology can do that I'm aware of. So I started virtual reality in particular, and at the time I started to think about what could students learn in that medium that would otherwise be impractical or expensive. And this was before Jeremy Bailenson, the founding director of the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford University, published his book, Experience on Demand, where he describes the DICE principle, which is where you think about virtual reality in terms of what can it do that would otherwise in the analog teaching world be dangerous, impossible, counterproductive, or expensive. But back in 2016 or 2017, I introduced mass casualty incident triage to our paramedic students, so in virtual reality. So this is an application where the student responds to a hotel where a bus has driven into the hotel lobby and injured a number of people. And the role of the paramedic in that situation is to go to each individual person, do a very rapid assessment, and determine who is the more seriously injured and needs to be transported immediately, who are the walking wounded, and so on. And we used to do that on an annual basis, host a mock disaster, but it was tremendously labor intensive, required a lot of people. We had to find student volunteers to wear makeup and to pretend they were injured, and we had to arrange some sort of incident, car crash, plane crash, etc., a mock disaster, and we'd have to contact police, fire, and paramedic dispatch to inform them that they were doing a mock disaster, so that when people call 911 thinking this was real, they would know that it wasn't real. So months and months of preparation. But in virtual reality, students can respond to any one of a variety of potential disasters: plane crash, train crash, shootings, etc., over and over again, so they can learn the principles of triage. And so that sort of got us started. And then I worked with some faculty here at the college to float the idea of building a virtual reality hub in the library where we could introduce teachers to virtual reality. And that led to a conversation with our senior leadership team, who asked me where I thought virtual, mixed, and augmented reality was going. And to my surprise, a week later, they said they wanted to create a position to oversee the exploration and integration of XR into curricula, and they wanted me to write up a job description and apply for the position. So I did that, and I've been doing this for 3 years now.
Wow. So from where the content had been, so is the content being developed, all the curriculum being developed in-house, or how does it work? The students make that, or how exactly does it work out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, colleges and universities typically take one of two pathways. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll harness the talents of their XR development students to create something for a specific subject area for a teacher, and they'll beta test it, and they may do some research around it, and then they'll decide whether this should be integrated into curriculum. The approach I took, and I was fortunate that our senior leadership team agreed with this approach. I wanted to get virtual VR in particular into the hands of as many teachers and students as possible. So what I did was I looked for off-the-shelf products, existing products that I felt were very compelling. I'll give you an example. Virtual reality anatomy is a very compelling application. It's like a hands-on experience in a life sciences lab that you would only get in a life sciences lab. So, if you're learning anatomy online, this would be very powerful, where you and the teacher stand in a life science lab, you're looking at a life-size anatomical model, you're walking around it. And I literally, came out of my office and stood in the hallway when I saw anatomy teachers walking by and said, "Hey, do you want to try this? See what you think of it?" And that was, then we would have a discussion around, well, what courses would you use this for, and what learning objectives would it address, and let's look at the cost and see if there's a return on investment. And then we would go to the associate deans and the deans to put together a proposal for a pilot. And so that's been my approach. And right now I find, I used to go out and look for teachers in a given area and say, "Hey, this looks really interesting. Would you like to try?" Now teachers are coming to me and saying, I teach in the interior design degree. I'd really like to find out what's available out there, and can we talk? So that's been my approach. And I think other colleges and universities are starting to adopt that model, or at least a blended model. We also do development, but the development we've done has been in partnership with other colleges and through grant funds, and in partnership with companies to build specific applications.
Okay, so how challenging was it for you to convince your higher authorities in terms of getting VR into the curriculum? And second question, like a follow-up question to this, since it's a very new technology, it's an emerging tech. So how, challenging, the challenges, of course, convincing the higher authorities in terms of the management to adopt it. Secondly, how difficult was it for you to make it acquaint with teachers in terms of, again, it's an emerging tech. So how open were they to, get their hands dirty into this sort of a way of teaching?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, to your point, it's an emerging technology, it's early days, and there are lots of barriers to adoption of virtual mixed and augmented reality. One of the participants asked about accessibility, and this is a serious challenge for virtual reality right now, is accessibility issues. And I'm working with our accessibility experts here at the college to provide some advice to companies. And I think, knowing that it's emerging technology and recognizing its pedagogical potential, I would encourage teachers to start exploring it now for two reasons. One, so we can all sort of collectively and individually begin to understand its potential value, its strength and its shortcomings, but also to advise companies on what we need as educators in terms of instructional design and accessibility and equity, diversity, inclusivity, and belonging, and all the other important things that need to be addressed in the design of these programs. So, teachers face a lot of barriers when it comes to leadership in this area. I was really quite fortunate. We had a president and a vice president academic who believed in it, and that really caught me by surprise, because most educational technologies have to reach a threshold level of interest before they gain acceptance, before they get funding and human resources attached to it. But I was surprised by their decision, and I think it was very forward thinking of them to allow me to do that. So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Synchronous online learning. So, I was, when I started teaching, I knew I was going to be teaching online, and I was determined to try to blend asynchronous with synchronous online learning, because if you've ever taken an asynchronous course, it can be done really well or it can be done really poorly. But more importantly, there's a disconnect between the teacher and the students, and there's a disconnect between students and students. They don't get to see each other, talk to each other, and I felt a synchronous platform would be ideal for that. So I started exploring synchronous online learning in 1999. And in 2005, I managed to convince my dean to give me a little bit of funding to blend asynchronous with synchronous. So we adopted a platform and I started using it. I spoke to other teachers about it. I spoke at our in-house conferences to large audiences of teachers about it. But by 2015, there were maybe 12 to 20 teachers who were using a synchronous online learning platform, which is not a threshold level of interest.
Yeah.
But, you know, fast forward to 2020 and the pandemic, and now suddenly every school in every country around the world is teaching synchronously. You know, we're having a conversation synchronously. I'm in Canada, you're in India, which is incredible, right? But we wouldn't be doing this except for the pandemic, mostly. So,
yes.
So for, you know, for virtual mixed and augmented reality, I think, you know, the participants in this group are, you know, the people here today are probably early adopters and innovators who are, you know, forward thinking and see at least the potential and want to hear more about it. And I think, you know, we need to collaborate with one another to help one another out. And I've spoken to a number of colleges and universities and told them what we're doing, and, you know, offered to help them get started as well. But the key is to get started, to explore, to go into it with a level of skepticism, and to, you know, think about it from an evidence standpoint. You know, is there evidence to support this? Does it enhance learning? Does it do something that would otherwise be dangerous, impossible, counterproductive, expensive, impractical, inappropriate, and so on? Does it shift the learning experience in a significant way? We won't know that until we try it. You know, there's, you know, sort of one group of people who like to wait till it's ready, and others who like to, you know, help make it ready. I think I fit in the latter category.
Yeah. So I guess all the folks who are attending the webinar right now, they are the key influencers, probably the potential key influencers in their organizations, institutes, etc., who can take probably key insights from this webinar and sort of be an advocate in their systems to at least take it forward. And I agree to it completely, because we need people like you, actually, who would just go out and, you know, just tell about the potential of VR. So moving forward, I think we have covered quite a bit in terms of, you know, key decision makers, influencers, etc., who would take the power of VR into their curriculum. But what, according to you, are the key subjects or the key areas where the VR could be fully integrated, given that it has the key power in terms of getting into the visualization part of it? So would you want to highlight with few examples in terms of the areas wherein one can explore the power of VR?
Yeah, let me start with the key, what I think are the key.
Or the industries also. You can highlight the industries as well. Sure.
Yeah, let me just start with what I think are the key features of virtual reality. We'll focus on virtual reality for now. That make this a powerful medium for experiential learning. The first in my mind is the spatial experience. So the spatial experience is one where you are you're in a completely different world. Ideally, it's to scale, unless it's some sort of fantastical world. There's social, or a sense of presence, if you will. So there's a spatial presence, there's a social presence. The social presence is important for social platforms where perhaps you're doing language learning or just group class activities. And that social presence requires a certain level of design that where people feel like they're actually with other students. And it can be as subtle as things like the size of the eyes of the avatar, and the eyes follow the voice. So people are actually, their avatars are actually looking at you when you're talking. And then there's the visceral presence, or which is not a term, or physiological presence, where, you know, for example, you are working on a wind turbine, and when you're up at the top of the wind turbine, you actually experience a fear of heights, so that you know that the illusion of presence and the illusion of the experience is sufficiently powerful that it elicits a visceral response, a fight or flight response. The second thing is context, and context is important for every subject area, whether it's languages or history. It's particularly important for things like languages and history and archaeology. And the third thing is agency, being able to do things with your hands. So those three things, presence, context, and agency, to me are critical to the virtual reality experience. And there's so many different subject areas in which you can leverage those qualities. So for example, our architectural technology was the first program to start using virtual reality, and our students design buildings in 2D, and then they go into a 3D environment. And when you're in that spatial environment, you can see much more clearly that, you know, the ceiling needs to be elevated 2 feet and the hallway is much too wide. We can narrow it, and this spiral staircase needs to move somewhere else. I've said this at many presentations, that there was an architectural firm who did a presentation, and they described how they were contracted to design a children's hospital. And what they did was they shrunk their avatars down to the size of a 5-year-old so they could see the design from a child's perspective, which I thought is an incredible use case of virtual reality. Other areas, for example, we co-developed with 7 other colleges a boiler plant simulator for our power engineering program. So students go into this boiler plant and they learn how to fire up a boiler plant. So they learn how to read gauges and water levels and open valves and turn levers and the sequence in which to do it. And they can do scenarios or do troubleshooting that might otherwise in the real world be dangerous, that they can't do in the physical simulator. And that's extraordinarily valuable. So even though the tactile fidelity is not there, you know, when you turn a valve or turn down a lever, you may not feel it other than a vibration in your controller, but you're learning how to do things in the proper sequence, and that's very powerful. That is a hands-on learning experience, and it's very powerful. We have, give you another example. We have, well, just as a summary, we have virtual reality integrated into curriculum in 4 programs right now. So architectural technology, indigenous language studies, maritime ship navigation, and fine arts. And our maritime ship navigation is a good example where we have at our Owen Sound campus one of the world's largest ship simulators. So we have students who come from all over the world, and they stand on this big deck, and they have a wraparound video, and they essentially pilot a ship into port. So these are the pilots who come out to the cruise ships and the tanker ships, and they pilot the ship into the last few kilometers into port and out of port. And but we've got some students who can't come to Canada for various reasons. And so what we do is we ship virtual reality headsets and computers to shipping companies, and we meet them in virtual reality, and our ship captains from Ontario teach them in virtual reality on a similar ship deck from a distance. So there, you know, any one of a number of applications that can enhance performance, reduce training time in very powerful ways in virtual reality. So just some other examples of things we're doing where our veterinary technician students are doing animals dissection in VR. We're doing VR anatomy in our biotech degree, nursing, paramedic, occupational therapy and physiotherapy, acupuncture, massage therapy, fitness, health promotion. We're doing VR in our events management program, our tourism program, and so on. So I think, as I was saying earlier, the key is to think about what could the students be learning in virtual reality that would otherwise be impractical, difficult, dangerous, and so on.
So these all are being covered in Georgia College, is what you're saying. These use cases that you've stated just now are being
mostly.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
mostly piloting. So as I said, we've integrated VR into 4 programs, but most of the other areas we're piloting. So piloting doesn't necessarily mean it's going to result in integration into curriculum. So it just there's so many factors. As the people attending this webinar will probably understand. So, whether it moves ahead depends on things like cost, or the cost of software, the cost of hardware, the maintenance of hardware, is there a teacher or two teachers in the program who are champions? What happens when a champion integrates virtual reality into the classroom, but then leaves to take a job teaching somewhere else? There are just so many factors.
I agree. So, how many students, teachers are being part of this pilot program in terms of just if you can highlight that as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have close to 400 VR headsets, and as I say, we've piloted VR in over 20 program areas. Between piloting and running virtual reality events, we've had well over 3,000 students experience virtual reality. Probably around 300 teachers so far have experienced it, and for me personally, that's my goal, is to get as many people experiencing it as possible. I'll give you an example. So our digital and visual arts program is introducing virtual reality for 3D painting this fall, September 2023. And we have an event every year where we have grade 8 students from the different schools come to Georgian College to, typically they get to visit 3 program areas to have a hands-on learning experience with those areas. So for digital and visual arts, what I did was organized a virtual painting event in our gymnasium. So we had 30 virtual reality stations. We saw about 140 grade 8 students over 2 days, and they got to experience 10 to 15 minutes of 3D painting in virtual reality. And the hope is to, that they'll see this and that they'll get excited about it and perhaps want to enroll in our digital and visual arts program. So we also explained that 3D painting in VR has opened up new markets for digital artists, for virtual world building, for the gaming industry, for medical illustration, and various other new job opportunities that didn't exist 5 years ago. So, and the great thing about painting in virtual reality is there's no requirement to buy paint, to buy canvases, to buy brushes, to clean up the mess. And students can do VR painting in the classroom or at home or on an airplane if they want to.
Yeah. That's great. That's very insightful, actually. In fact, when you were telling about the power boiler, the boiler plant module, I think it sort of resonated with me as well, because I have seen IXR labs, they cater into the engineering content modules, and I have actually experienced like going into the boiler, tracking the numbers in terms of what is the heat, how if the heat is less, then what is the effect on the other turbines. I think I could feel what you were saying in terms of my retention of, I'm not in from the field of engineering. So in terms of, understanding of the concept, which really sort of made me enlighten about the concept and, made me more aware about concepts of these kinds. So yeah, fantastic, I think.
Right, and I mean, the incredible thing about it is that it provides students with a hands-on experience very early on in their educational experience. So, for example, there are a number of community colleges here in Ontario that offer a wind turbine maintenance course, and most of the students learn theory in the first 6 months and then go out to wind turbines in the second semester and have a combination of theory and hands-on experience. But now students can get that hands-on experience in a wind turbine in the very first week. They can go into a wind turbine, they can learn all the mechanics of wind turbine and do some troubleshooting in the very beginning, so that they're better prepared for the real hands-on experience when they get the same semester. And that applies to all fields of engineering, whether it's at the trades level or the more advanced level. Educators would describe that as an embodied experience, embodied cognition, where you've got the environment, the context, the hands-on experience gives you indelible memories and very powerful learning experiences that until now have been simply someone talking to a set of PowerPoint slides. So the potential is incredible.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's been also enforced in engineering colleges in India as well. Like traditionally, what was happening was, again, what you exactly told, like 6 months of theoretical, 6 months of practical in terms of going into the industry. Also, there were some complex parts of in the industry training wherein people are not allowed, students are not given much exposure to. So I think that is wherein I guess IXR Labs is also solving for, in terms of, giving that industry acumen to the core engineering branches in advance, so that they are much more hands-on when they join the industry. And we have quite a few plants, thermal plants, etc. in India, which are already in, wherein there is a need of core electrical, mechanical, civil engineers, but I think they sort of, how VR is helping them bridge the skill gap is something that is being fantastic. So I think moving on, in terms of the infrastructure for VR training, what do you think are the key essentials in terms of before setting up a VR lab or VR, if someone is starting out new, how many devices they can get into their system? How should they go about it? Any quick insights on that?
Yeah, I generally recommend start small. The key is, in my mind, I've been teaching for many years, and innovation happens at the teacher level. And so, to me, it's important to find teachers who are early adopters and innovators. And oftentimes, these teachers are very quiet about it. They do innovative things and they don't tell anyone about it, or maybe they tell a close group of colleagues about it and no one else. And which is really unfortunate, because an entire college or university can benefit from the innovation of one teacher. And so, for example, when I started in this role, I only learned 2 months after I started that a guy by the name of Kostin Biangiu was using virtual reality in our architectural technology program. He's a quiet, humble guy doing incredible things. And the college should be showcasing what he's doing, and it has since then, which is great. Yeah, I think the key is to start small, and building an XR lab is always a good idea. But if you build an XR lab, no one's going to come to it unless you bring them to it. So you really have to. You build a lab, you have to think about really strong use cases of virtual reality, and then approach faculty and say, hey, would you like to come try this, see what you think? Some people are not going to be sold on it at all until they experience it for the first time. I can tell you, the teachers who teach piloting cruise ships and tanker ships were, one of them in particular was very skeptical. And when he tried it for the first time, he said, Rob, I'm going to be honest, I don't think this is going to be a good learning experience. I just don't see this as something that our students would benefit from. And I said, yeah, no problem, try it. I don't know anything about navigating ships. Give it a try, see what you think. It might be good, it might not be good. And within 10 minutes after trying it, he said, you know what, Rob, this was not at all what I thought it would be. This is incredible. And there are a lot of short VR experiences that are valuable to so many different areas. So for example, our interior design students, they they might use virtual reality 4 or 5 times in one semester. So an XR lab is perfect for that. Our liberal arts students may want to experience 2 or 3 virtual reality experiences on cultural debiasing or understanding what it's like to be homeless. And they can come to a lab and experience that. And the teacher might say, you know, your assignment for this semester is one of 3 assignments. One of them is virtual reality, if those who want to choose that. And then when you do this, just the expectation is you write a reflective paper on what you experienced. And so we've had that. So an XR lab is good for that. It's a good incubator space for trialing new things, for trialing things that are developed in-house, and just for generating interest amongst teachers. And the content for virtual reality is, some would say limited, and I'm inclined to agree that it's limited, but it's also quite extensive in a lot of ways. We have a fitness and health promotion program, and students can not only do fitness training in virtual reality, but they can meet with clients in virtual reality and monitor their progress using the analytics, which is really mind-blowing. And they don't even have to leave their own basement to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very interesting and insightful insights, honestly. And we have a huge pop-in questions that are coming along. So I think I will now shift to the questions because they might interject with what I have also further in mind. So I'll take one question from Andre. So he says, "Hi Rob, based on all the activities at your college in the past few years, have you or other faculty members had the opportunity to conduct formal research at Georgian on the efficacy of VR in the classroom or on a specific aspect of VR?"
Yeah, I want to say 2 things to that question. First of all, thanks, Andre, for that question. Secondly, Andre and I know each other. Andre is a professor at Conestoga College, which is about a 3-hour drive from Georgian College. And I'm a big believer in peer learning networks, in learning from other teachers and sharing what I know with other teachers. And our interior design program actually approached me and asked if there was anything in virtual reality that could be used for interior design. And my short answer was, I don't know. And I reached out to my peers, and Andre does know this stuff. And actually, Andre came to our college and taught interior design in virtual reality for our students on, I think, the 3 occasions now. And so he's been a great help to me. To answer his question about research, yes, we are just wrapping up a 2-year study on the efficacy of virtual reality anatomy right now. My hope is to do some additional research going forward. And I think it's important for colleges and universities to study the efficacy of experiential learning in virtual reality. And there's, for researchers, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. So lots of opportunities to look at, the true value of virtual mixed or augmented reality. Does it actually enhance learning? Does it reduce training time? Does it reduce risk or dangers? And so on.
Fantastic. So, this is my follow-up question to the Andre question. So, you have highlighted the importance of, imparting knowledge about VR to the, say, early adopters or influencers, if we may call. So, how do you think that people find those early adopters? How do they connect within each other to share, the resources, the knowledge, the kind of work we are doing, the kind of work they are doing, finding synergies, because it's still in so nascent stage that, everyone is finding ways to connect the dot. But as you said, that people who are doing good stuff are being shy about it and not necessarily being very well, into the limelight of, or being approachable, or might not have time to share their knowledge. So how to just bridge this gap and how to, foster that ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have the good fortune of having been a teacher at Georgian College for 18 years, so I know a lot of the faculty, and I knew the early adopters, the innovators, or at least I knew some of them, and so it was easy to me. I could just go to them and say, hey, do you want to try this? Alternatively, I think an XR lab is a really good place, and what I would do with the XR lab is advertise to the entire school that you're having XR demo days, and today you're demoing all of the applications that you have in that in the affective domain. So becoming homeless, sexism, cultural debiasing, understanding what it's like to live in a refugee camp, and so on. Next Wednesday, we're doing all of our engineering applications. So we invite our engineering faculty to come try. The week after that, we're doing languages. The week after that, we're doing trades. When you host events like that and teachers come, the early adopters and the innovators are usually the ones who come, or the very curious come, and so they seek you out, but you've got to extend the invitation to get them there and encourage them and do some hand holding. That's, in my mind, that's the key to getting started.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for answering that. So we have one question from Karen. So the question is, when procuring headsets and technology, what is the best way for institutions to mitigate the impact of VR technology that might become obsolete or discontinued? I think that's a fantastic question, because that is something that is being very repetitive in terms of being a question that comes in the mind of almost everyone.
Yeah, I agree. So my experience so far is that a headset is good for about 4 years, and you can wait until the dust settles, and we have sort of a core set of technologies that people agree on for educational purposes, or you can start exploring. My advice would be start exploring, because if you wait, you end up catching up. And it doesn't mean an entire school needs to adopt virtual, mixed, or augmented reality. It just means some key people, like people with an education background at an XR lab, and someone with a technical background sort of get together and meet with teachers and help them explore both the hardware and the software. The hardware is a challenge. I don't know, there really is, in my mind, not a headset that is education friendly yet. The MetaQuest 2 and the MetaQuest 3 have its problems, although they are currently beta testing an enterprise model, and I've had conversations with them about once that happens, creating an education model, which is at a lower price point, and where a mobile device management system is provided at no cost or almost no cost. Vive is a little bit more friendly in terms of there's no requirement for login to a Vive headset. The Pico Neo headset also a little less problematic that way. And then the content becomes a bit of a challenge, because certain content is available on one headset but not another. And so when you're looking at content, you have to look at what headsets are compatible with what. Also, again, to the accessibility issue, headsets they're heavy, they're uncomfortable for a lot of people, and most people don't tolerate wearing a headset for more than 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. I've been looking for a strap for a headset. I haven't found a strap yet that would work for someone who has a turban. And that, to me, is just unacceptable. It shocks me that I haven't found a third-party company yet that's built a strap for a headset that would fit. Glasses are another problem. If you've got, my glasses just sort of barely fit into a headset, but if you've got slightly wider frames, they may not fit into a headset. So you're forced with getting contact lenses, and so on and so forth. So I guess, sorry, that's a long answer, but I would say, take a leap of faith, purchase some software, talk to other people who are running XR labs, find out which software and hardware they're using, make the leap, start small, explore, get to know, what headsets are good for what, and it's trial and error. And if you've got a school that's willing to invest in it and support in that exploration, which I think is very smart because it can be a differentiator for different schools, then you're in luck.
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I think you have not given a very narrow answer. It's like people can, pick and choose whatever fits their university or institute protocols, and then they can dive into it accordingly. Okay, that's quite an interesting question. I think we have 5 to 10 minutes more, if you allow.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'd like to address a question that you sent me. And that is a question about artificial intelligence and XR.
Yes, I was about to end it with that, but yeah, you please do. I think it's a burning hot topic. AI.
It's a burning. it's a burning hot topic, and I'm by no means an expert in it. But what's interesting about generative artificial intelligence and the power of it is that two things. One, so a lot of schools and universities are looking at it as a creation platform, and how do we police it? How do we keep students from cheating, from using it for writing papers, for doing computer coding, for creating art, and so on? And I think those are important questions to discuss at colleges and universities. I think the bigger question is, in the next 2 to 5 years, how do we completely change the way students learn, and how do we change the way learning is assessed and evaluated? And I think leveraging artificial intelligence is one way to do that. So, for example, in virtual reality, there are many programs that use analytics, that use AI essentially, and provide analytics. So we can measure a student's competency based on the analytics that we get from virtual reality. So in a medical simulation, the analytics will tell you what the nurse did, the sequence in which she did it, did she give the right drug, the right dose at the right time via the right route, and so on. And we'll tell you everything that was done and the sequence in which it was done. And those analytics are very powerful to evaluate the student's performance, but it also frees the instructors up a little bit to be able to focus on the soft skills. Did the nurse seeing student exhibit compassion and empathy? And secondly, we're going to see generative AI used more and more for NPCs, for non-player characters in virtual reality, where we're going to be able to leverage AI for things like conversations, things like role play, how to de-escalate a potentially volatile situation, how to conduct a job interview, how to be the interviewee, how to take a medical history. And I think we're going to see AI become more of a partner, a tutor in virtual spaces, where so you're in a plant and you're learning how to operate the plant or how to operate the machinery, and you've got artificial intelligence in the form of an avatar who's standing next to you, who's telling you what to do. And saying, make sure you check this gauge before you turn this dial, and turn the dial to this level, and and then the AI will ask you, what's the rationale for turning the dial to that level? And you'll have a conversation with the AI, and the AI will at the same time be evaluating your knowledge, comprehension, ability to apply that knowledge, your critical thinking skills. So I think AI is going to play a huge role going forward as both a provider of learning experiences and an evaluator of the individual's learning.
Fantastic. So have you in Georgia College taken a pilot for AI integration into VR also?
We have, yeah. So we've used a couple of programs. We use one called PCS Spark, which is uses voice recognition and artificial intelligence, where you can sit in a room in a hospital room with a patient and actually have a conversation with her and ask her about her headache. When did your headache start? Where is the headache? How bad is it on a scale of 1 to 10? What's your medical history? What are your allergies? What medications do you take? What other signs and symptoms have you experienced with this headache?
Right.
And the analytics provides a breakdown of everything that was asked, the sequence in which it was asked, provides a transcript of what the student and the AI said, so the teacher can look at it and say, don't forget to ask this question in the future. We did something similar with our paramedic program, where a student is speaking to avatars. The avatars are standing around someone who's collapsed on the floor, and each avatar has a name tag. And the student just basically tells the avatar what to do. You can say, Aaron, can you check for a pulse? Phil, can you start chest compressions? Fatima, can you defibrillate and start an intravenous line? Ross, can you give some epinephrine? And again, the analytics provides a written summary of everything that was done in the sequence in which it was done. And so that's, AI is going to become very pervasive in virtual, mixed, and augmented reality experiences to the point where it will become the teaching assistant in those environments. It's really we're entering a Star Trek moment.
Yeah. So you have already introduced the concept of metaverse into your college. People are just into their own worlds, doing their things with their powers. There's one interesting question which I can see, which is a little technical, but good in terms of asked by Brandon. So have you created any rooms or VR interactions within pre-existing platforms like Rec Room, Altspace, or Mozilla Hubs?
We used actually for our Indigenous language studies, the first world that we built was in Altspace VR. I took a template of a house and I furnished the house, and I labeled everything inside the house and outside the house with the Anishinaabe and Mowin words and English words. And I haven't used Mozilla Hubs yet, but I'm exploring spatial and VR chat right now for learning. So I think those are really interesting social VR platforms, and there are hundreds of amateur world builders and educators who are exploring world building in there. And I'm really excited about that because, for things like language and history, there's a lack of contextual worlds. And so, if the students want to visit Petra or visit the Acropolis, they should be able to do that in virtual reality. If I was teaching Greek history, I would much rather have my students and myself sitting on the steps of the Parthenon than sitting in a theater-style classroom looking at a slide projector or a screen and a data projector. So yeah, I think those platforms are powerful, but they have shortcomings too. One of the shortcomings of using social VR platforms is you're typically sitting in a swivel chair and your avatar is moving, and that conflict between your avatar moving and your body remaining still causes motion sickness in about 25% of the population. So we need to be able to address the motion sickness, the cyber sickness issue. And there are ways to mitigate that now. But a number of researchers, particularly, for example, at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia, are exploring ways to mitigate motion sickness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's one. Okay, there are a lot of questions that are coming. I don't know. Okay, one is from David. He's from UAE. So he asks that when budgets are tight and there's little time to bring colleague students up to speed on an HMD, I'm trying to trial frame VR as a foot in the door, so to speak. Only laptops required or a mobile phone tablet that is required for the put-in. So do you see that as a useful way to begin to introduce others to VR? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understood all the question. It was,
So he's asking, other than a VR headset,
oh,
probably
right. Okay, yeah.
accessibility point of view, if the budgets are tight, can the concept of VR be introduced into the colleges through, say,
Yeah.
mobile, tablet, la la la? So yeah, your take on it.
Yeah, short answer is yes, I agree. So for example, in our Indigenous language studies, most of the students access the world using virtual reality, but we have, usually every semester we have one student who doesn't tolerate virtual reality, so they access it using their computer. It's not ideal, and I think eventually, you know, we'll get past the motion sickness issue and the weight of the headset issue as the technology improves, the weight comes down. And especially with pass-through technology, I think once a student can don a headset that uses, I like to call it immersive augmented reality, although that term doesn't exist, but you know, augmented reality glasses typically have a very narrow field of view, maybe 42%. And but with pass-through technology, with you know, Apple's Vision Pro or the Quest 3 or the Quest Pro and the Quest 2, you can get a much wilder field of view. You can alter the world around you, but you still have the floor reference and the real world reference, and you're less likely to experience the discomfort that you might feel in full immersive virtual reality. And I think that has a lot of potential to, you know, sort of make the experience more equitable for everyone in the room. So yes, but the short answer is yes, tablets, mobile devices are acceptable alternatives and have to be acceptable alternatives because not everyone will tolerate a virtual reality experience.
Agreed. So there's one, I don't know if you have time, do you want to take one or two more questions? So when doing professor demos, how do you get access to the software as a trial for demoing? It's a question by Jim.
Yeah, so I reach out to the companies typically and ask them for a trial. Now, a lot of companies, they'll give you a trial for a week, and I'll usually tell them a week is no good because teachers are very, very busy, and you know, so I need a trial version for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. The other thing I encourage companies to do is if they've got a suite of virtual reality experiences, create some demo versions of that. So some shortened versions, maybe not with all of the bells and whistles, all of the features, so that teachers and students can experience it and get a sense of what the experience is like without experiencing the full thing. So yeah, I mean, and one of the advantages of exploring virtual mixed and augmented reality now is that because it's still early days, I'm often talking to CEOs and founders of companies. In 5 years from now, we'll be talking to salespeople, and no offense to salespeople, but if you want to influence instructional design and you know, pricing and things like that, you need to be talking to the people at the top. So right now, we're able to talk to people at the top, and they're pretty receptive. I've had great conversations with CEOs and founders, and they're really flexible. They want to you know, make you happy, and they want to be reasonable. And some of them are starting to understand the difference between enterprise and education. Enterprise might be able to afford more than education can, and so a lot of experiences in education can be cost prohibitive. You know, those. I'll give you an example. There's an application that I liked. It was two scenarios in this application. It was really good, really good, but it only addressed 2 learning objectives in one course, and they wanted $120 per student per year for that application. Well, that's completely cost prohibitive if it only addresses 2 learning objectives in one course, and the students are only going to do it once, maybe twice. Now, if it was a $120 perpetual license, I would buy it. I would buy it for a dozen headsets. That company decided not to change their mind on it, and I didn't make any headway with them, but I've talked to numerous companies who've changed their pricing and come up with education model. And some companies, I'll give you an example. Gravity Sketch is a great company. Gravity Sketch is a 3D design platform, and companies like Nissan and Ford and Bell Helicopters use Gravity Sketch to design vehicles and helicopters in 3D, and it's dramatically reduced their design time from months to weeks, in some cases weeks to days, and it's saved them tens of millions of dollars. Now, the market for Gravity Sketch is industry, and but for schools, they give you the software for free, the full enterprise version for free, because they want to seed their product. So seeding the product, means getting it into the hands of as many students as possible. So when students graduate from college or university, they're going to want to use that product. Very smart.
Yeah.
That's a very smart marketing strategy. I wish more companies would do that. I know it's not always possible, to do that and still survive as a company, but very smart.
Yeah. Thank you for the answer. I think we should take the learning. So any tips, closing thoughts that you may have before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would just say, feel free to reach out to me. I'll type in my, I'll give you my LinkedIn connection here in the chat. Because, the challenge is getting information. And Paulo Coelho once said, sometimes we have to travel a great distance to find what is near. And that's very true of educational technology. And it's a real shame that, sometimes you look for something and look, and then you run into another educator and say, I've been trying to find the solution to this. And the other educator says, oh, well, you just do this. And you start thinking, why didn't I learn this 2 years ago? Why is it taking so long to figure it out? So I'm a big believer in peer learning networks and helping each other out. So feel free to reach out to me and connect.
Sure. I think this has inspired me also to, at least for the attendees that joined, we can start a community probably, because clearly the questions have been really intriguing and insightful at the same time. And I think fantastic 1 hour of session, good learnings. And I think we can all collaboratively work together to, at least wherever we are, we can just amplify the power of PR into the higher or the education system also, be it K-12 or be it higher ed. I think it has the capability to, solve for both.
Right, and K-12 is a whole different subject area, and anyone in the K-12 space, if you want to reach out to me, it's not my area of expertise, but I can certainly share whatever I know. I also teach a virtual reality educator micro-credential. The next one is in October. I just posted the link there. So the page is a little out of date, but it'll be updated in another month. And it's a fun course. I've had about 150 educators come through it so far.
Yeah. I think I'll also chat with you one-on-one regarding some few possibilities of both the power of metaverse as well as probably taking VR into the next maybe newer markets, or let's see. Thank you so much everyone for joining in. It had been really enriching experience. Thank you so much, Rob. It was fantastic conversation that I've had, and thank you for solving all our questions with so much of patience. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have a good day, everyone.
Okay.